Hello, authors and readers, and welcome to my weekly YouTube video. This is freelance fiction editor Miranda Darrow with my monthly novel deep dive, where I invite a guest or several to chat with me about a recent novel that demonstrates a specific fiction writing skill or technique. We're going to explore how the author did it with an aim for authors to see how they can improve their own work, while we're also taking a positive look about a current best-selling title. First, we're going to start with the spoiler alert. All of my novel deep dive videos contain serious spoilers for the book that's being discussed. So if you have not read this month's book, The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, probably pause this and go read it. Because there are serious spoilers if you don't want it spoiled. And then come back and watch this. I used to get annoyed at my old book club where I had friends that we were all supposed to read one book in a month, and then people would show up and they hadn't finished or they hadn't even started and they didn't want it spoiling it. And I would say to them, this is book club. This is the one time when we're going to talk about it. So we are definitely going to talk about it here. But you can pause and you can come back. So here we are. This month's book is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. The specific writing technique that we're exploring is romantasy fiction, specifically how this novel demonstrates the differences and similarities with romance genre novels and also fantasy. My guest today is fellow freelance fiction editor and book coach, Sue Brown Moore. Sue's editing business is focused on romance genre. And for those of you who are newsletter signees of mine, Sue is offering a fabulous giveaway, a flipped trope checklist. So if you want to use a trope and you want to make sure that you flipped it without completely subverting it and annoying Romancelandia, then check out Sue's checklist. So let's kick it off. And reminder, we are spoiling this novel. Sue, welcome to the video. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I have actually never read Fourth Wing before this. So when you said, let's do Fourth Wing, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to break my rule, which is that I don't read series until they're finished because I will become a super fan and then I will be that person that's waiting a year or two and like, when is it coming? And I will say that I'm glad I broke my rule, but that did happen. I did become a super fan and now I have to wait for the rest of the series, just like everybody else.
Well, thank you for breaking your rule to join me to talk about Romantasy. And some of the other topics some of the other titles that we're talking about will be older in series that may or may not be done. But I do like to try and stay on top of what's current right now, because I'm always trying to help be a matchmaker between authors and comp titles and just understanding what's happening, what's trending with publishing in different genres. All right. So if you're playing along at home, meaning that you are an author or a reader who has downloaded our book club booster kit, we are going to start our list of questions. So if you by yourself or you and your group of reader friends are getting ready to have us join your discussion, Sue and I are going to be two super readers joining your book discussion group. Here we are. We're kicking it off with our first question. While this was not the first romantasy novel to gain a mass audience, hat tip to A Court of Thorns and Roses and others, Fourth Wing brought a lot of attention to the new subgenre title of romantasy. Do you think that this reads more like a fantasy novel with a central romance or a romance novel with a fantasy setting? And to support your answer, what specific craft choices tip the scales? Do you think it's about proportion or other writing elements?
I feel like it's a pretty even split. So I have read a lot of fantasy, especially high fantasy when I was younger. I will say now I mostly read romance. Almost everything I read is romance or something with romantic themes like romantasy, romantic urban fantasy. And the fantasy genre has a much different feel than Fourth Wing does or A Court of Thorns and Roses does. But these stories, these romantasy stories, also have a very different feel from romance. And I feel like for both Fourth Wing and earlier ACOTAR do a really good job of balancing the fantasy elements and the romance elements. So we can talk about more about that, how that happens. But I'm curious, what is your thought about that?
So I've read quite a few of those too. I read a fair amount of romance, but it's not the majority of what I read. And so I read probably more fantasy and more science fantasy, but I think that it reads more like fantasy with a central romance than a traditional romance genre. And I've got kind of two reasons. The first one is just how much world building there is. So we've got an entire fantasy school, which made this read more YA fantasy to me, even though it's really more new adult age category. And we're going to talk about that in a bit. And then there's the heat level. And then the proportion. The proportion was huge because we spent a lot of time building this universe and this school and the external plot of getting trained for dragon writing school. And we don't even see the first kiss until halfway through the book. I tagged it and I'm like, what? We don't get the first kiss until, yes, that far. And so with proportion, I think that the amount of world building and detail for the war school, that's why I'm saying this is more fantasy with a subplot of romance. And because if I were to dish this up using an absolutely unscientific method, I would say that 60% is on the external plot of the war school and what's going on with these raids and the drama about the dragons. And then there's like 15% that's character growth arc. Okay, so that only leaves us with like 25% for the romance. And for it to be a romance, it's got to be at least 50-50, if not 60-40 featured on the romance. So that to me, if I were doing made up math, that's where I would get that. We get a fair amount of interiority for Violet, but her thoughts are often more related to her growth arc than they are about Xaden, and the thoughts she has about him are a little superficial, maybe. Okay, and not as related with her own inner wound, like you would see in a traditional romance, where what's holding them back from being with their true love is all this like emotional baggage they get to go through. She does have to like go through some trust issues with him, but that's not really related to her thoughts about him. Her thoughts about him are, oh, he's hot. Okay, all right. So did you have anything else you wanted to add on that one?
Yeah, a couple of things. I actually had to start taking notes because I was like, "Oh, there's like three things I wanted to say there."
Do it, go.
I think I hope I can remember them all. I will start with romance. So I completely agree that yes, it is the first kiss is late. She doesn't
Right.
even like him. He doesn't even
No.
like her for the first half of the book, and I think that is a hallmark of romantasy. That's part of what this modern romantasy style is because it is such a heavy mix of fantasy with the romance beats. The way I look at it is you're not just investing in one story, you're investing in a series of books. So the
Mhm.
first book is sort of like it's just a fragment of the hero's growth arc. But that growth arc is essential to romance, probably more than fantasy. So
Right.
that is the piece that is really, I think, essential that says, "Hey, that's the marker. I am romance," even though a lot of people probably don't realize that that is a marker of romance. If you don't have that, you have to question, is it actually a romance? Because point is that the two people make each other better
That's
through
right.
the
That's right. If there isn't something internal preventing them from being together, then you don't have the
right.
growth arc that is a satisfying, they've earned that happy ever after.
Yes. And so I think that's why it doesn't really bother me. And I'm actually really glad that the pacing is so slow at the beginning because there is such a heavy amount of world building that has to be done, that is essential to the story. So that was something else that I was thinking about earlier is you can't take this story and just plop it into a different setting. It is
Oh,
essentially tied to all of the storytelling elements, which is why it has to be romance and fantasy. It cannot be either one separately. It's the whole point of that genre is to blend those two things so that everything is essential. So if we don't understand why she's here, who she is as a person, what she's going to face, then the romance doesn't matter. What comes after doesn't matter because it's not going to affect her, right? And that's
right.
how we also need to know why Xaden is why she doesn't like him. What is the conflict keeping them apart? There's got to be a reason they can't just get together, or it's not like where's the
Right.
tension,
They're
right?
both young and single. What's the problem?
He's hot, she's hot, let's go, right?
Yeah.
But aside from that, like, oh my gosh, the world building in this story is phenomenal. It's so good. I could talk about it forever. But anyway, I think really we have to look at it not as a single book that is a romance book, but as an entire series that the romance beat arcs kind of have to span, and the growth arc has to span that whole set. And we don't even know where that's going to end yet. The series is not done.
Right. Somebody knows, but it's Rebecca Yarros. All right, we're going to go on to the next question. Did you ever feel like this book was lecturing you about how its world works, or did the rules and magic just make sense as you went along? And can you pinpoint a moment where you learned something big about the world without really realizing that you were being taught?
The world building is so well done. The thing about world building is that when it's well done, you almost don't even notice. You're just there and it's happening and you know things and you're like, this is great. When it's not well done, you notice it because it's either missing or it's info dumped, right? And this story, yes, there is a little bit of info dumping. I did peek into book 2. I couldn't stop myself. So I did get started. And we start to see a little bit more info dumping in book 2, but I still think it's in a healthy way, showing versus telling. But early on in the story, when they don't just be like, here's what a signet is, or here's how dragons choose riders. They don't tell you those things. They just sort of, she experiences them. She knows things. She tells us some of the things she knows because they're relevant, but she doesn't, we don't read her entire history in her brain. And I think those for me are the hallmarks of really good world building because they tell you what you need to know without telling you what you need to know.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just what you need to know at just the right time. It's not all front loaded. We find out stuff all the way along. So I went back and I was looking to see, how exactly did this start? And it starts with this weird little throwaway mini prologue that's on like this page. I don't know if anybody can see it. It's this page that starts before chapter 1 that says, the following text has been faithfully transcribed from Navarian into the modern language by Desinia Neilwort, curator of the scribe quadrant of the Basgiath War College. All events are true and names have been preserved to honor the courage of those fallen. May their souls be commended to Malin. All right, so I'm reading this and I was like, I said it's a throwaway prologue because we never get back to it. And I know this is the first in a series, but this is telling me things like, this is a long time ago because the language has changed and they've had to just transcribe it from Navarian into the modern language. Okay. And this is not set on Earth because we didn't have dragons in the past and all these other things. And so I was kind of set up with that. And then I was a little disappointed that we never got to see, it's like, whoa, this was in a galaxy far, far away, long, long ago. So that set me up to think, okay, so this is a non-Earth and I'm expecting everything to be non-Earth. But then the first chapter, we're getting grounded in Violet's perspective very nice. It's the morning of the conscription day. It's the deadliest day. And I'm like, ooh, why? I want to read more. And then we read The Sunrise is Beautiful. And that to me was generic. I'm just like, oh, the sunrise is beautiful. I'm guessing that there's just one sun, but maybe there wasn't. And so I didn't really learn anything from that. But then we get into the next part. She's carrying a 30-pound backpack. She's trudging up 6 flights of stairs on a wide staircase to a stone fortress that she calls home. I'm like, ooh, okay. Now I've got a good picture. I'm grounded. And it's not just her saying, and then I stood and I looked at the stone fortress. No, she's walking up the stairs. She's doing stuff. I'm getting a picture. She's not very strong. She can barely make it up 6 flights of steps. Now, I know that could be a challenge to me, but I'm not 20 years old. And then she says that she'd started 6 months of intense physical training 6 months ago. And I'm like, what happened 6 months ago? Is that when her dad died and her mom had said, you're going to dragon school and you can't go to Scott? I spent the rest of the book looking for what happened 6 months ago. So I'm like, I'm very picky about, hey, you need to like tie that back in or, so maybe it'll come back later. So then her mom decided she's going to dragon school. And then Dane, her childhood best friend, points out that she planned going to scribe school and that her mom is for some reason insisting that she goes to dragon school. And that doesn't endear me to her mom. So good. There's conflict. I like that. And I'm a mom and I can't imagine, hey, don't go to this safe school. Go to this one where you could die. So I'm like, something's going on here. So, but then on the first page, well, it's the second page because there was a little prologue, but on the first page of chapter 1, she says, I'm so fucked. And so that took me out of the fantasy universe. And I will say that because that's the first line. That's almost the exact same first line of The Martian by Andy Weir, in which the main character, Mark Watley, says, his first line is, I'm pretty much fucked. And that makes sense because Mark Watley was born on Earth and he's an astronaut and he's stranded on Mars where he was left for dead. But for Violet, who didn't grow up on Earth. This isn't Earth. This is some other world. Why are they swearing like we do? And so they do a good job in other parts where we talk about commending their souls to Malik and stuff like that. But we'll talk a little bit more about the language. But I like for fantasy swears to not be, to be specific to the universe and specific to the characters. I like, by the stars, or Malik take them, or even like a slight change like God's damned, like there's more than one. So and I really like multi-purpose swear words. Like I just finished James Islington's the first two books in the Hierarchy series, where they say Vec. We know what Vec means, but Vec this, Vec that. And Battlestar Galactica, they would say frack, like the fracking toasters. We all know, but that reminded us we're in a fantasy universe. We're not on Earth. And so, but the world building in general is really good. It's a decent job of introducing the universe in the context of the current timeline scenes. And so one way to tell that we're on, we're in the scene. She's doing stuff. She has dialogue. She's talking to other people, and we're not stuck in her head, because sometimes, especially in like YA and New Adult, we've got somebody like thinking about things and remembering things. And I'm like, no, get out and interact with that to show us the world building in context. And so, yeah. Oh, and the premise of the school is a nice device that you can teach world building by having a class about it. And so it's like, yeah, I saw it. Last month's video was about the will of the many and the hierarchy, and they have a school there too. And they have some really complex world building. It's more complex than this one in like a mathematical way. And they had a class about it, and it made it organic. It was still a little info dumpy there. But here we have dragons, magic skills that don't manifest until after a student has bonded with a dragon. And then there's this backstory about skirmishes. And there's other fantasy creatures like griffins. And they all get introduced in a pretty organic way in the context of live scenes. So
I will say that I actually really liked that it was modern language. And that's something I wrote down as a note.
We can spar. Yes.
Yeah. I wrote that down as a note for myself because I have read a lot of fantasy when I was younger. I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. Like, I mean, I like it, right? But it is there. That language, it puts up kind of a wall between you and the universe that you're trying to be part of. And when you can immediately just understand, like there's no cognitive filter that you have to go through in your brain when somebody says something like "I'm fucked" or "I had a shitty day," which are actually words that this book uses.
No, this one says both of those things a lot of times.
And you like, you don't really think of it. So if you're so far in the story, like for me, I'm so far in the story, I can stay in the story. I'm not pulled out to be like, wait, who is Malik? Right? They do talk about Malik, and I do like commend their souls to Malik. Like that sort of is great world building, and I love those things. But I also like the little, like simple things that are so easy for me as a reader to just slide into her head. That way, I'm not having to keep myself separate and like do all that cognitive load while I'm just trying to sit in the story.
All right. No, that's cool. All right. We're going to move on to the next question. So if you've also read A Court of Thorn and Roses, how did starting Fourth Wing feel different? And what does that opening energy tell you about which each of the authors is promising?
I will say that I also had to be sort of convinced to read A Court of Thorns and Roses.
No! Sue, come on, join us here.
What's great is I'm a super fan now. I love it. But I don't like to read series that aren't finished because
it may never be finished. It could be.
I waited for ACOTAR, I waited like 5 years before I read it. And I waited until the full audio was out. So I listened to audio. So I listened to the Fourth Wing audio, which I loved. It was so good. And the ACOTAR audio that I listened to was the full cast version with like sounds and music and everything. So good.
Very fancy.
And I'm glad that I waited for that because I got full cast narration and it was emotional and acted. And I think it was a better experience than if I had just read that massive tome on my own. But back to your question. I almost quit the first ACOTAR book within the first third. I had to force myself, even with the good narration, I had to force myself because it was squalor. Like we come into that book and Farah is miserable. She has no allies in her life. Everybody in her life is sapping things from her. Her community hates her. She's struggling to live, to eat. she skins a wolf. Sorry, spoilers for ACOTAR. She
Yeah.
spins. I mean, as many. It's old now, but she skins a wolf that we know is not a wolf, and this is all on page. And I'm just like, this is not what I want. As opposed to Fourth Wing, where you're dropped into basically a school setting, which is kind of safe within itself, even though they tell you it's not safe because they have a really high mortality rate in the school. But the fact that she's the general's daughter, she's not living in squalor, she doesn't have financial problems, she's not like, she's worried about her life. And that is something that's very interesting to me as a reader, because I'm not really worried about my life. But I don't want to put myself in a situation where, like, they don't have modern things that make their life easier. They have minor magics they can open doors with. They have clothes. They're not worried about where their meal is going to come from. That sort of thing takes me out of the experience as a reader, because I don't want to live that life. I don't want to think about that life, and I want to immerse myself in the story. So I was immediately immersed in Fourth Wing in a way that ACOTAR I didn't get into until halfway through the first book.
Oh, well, I had the opposite experience. So I liked ACOTAR's opening better. I thought it was a real banger opening. So just again, more spoilers for ACOTAR, because Fairy is out in the frozen woods and she's hunting for food to keep her family from starving. And this reminded me of the Hunger Games, because I read it within the same decade that I first read the Hunger Games, because it's been out since 2015. So spoiler alert for a book that's over 10 years old. There's a big wolf. Maybe it's magical, but she shoots it with an arrow anyway, because she's a wolf and they're hungry. And she goes home and she sees her family, and she's, all this guilt she's carrying. She swore to her dying mom that she would protect her dad and her sisters. And this was so relatable to me going back and reading that opening now, because I'm the only daughter. I have brothers, but those oldest daughters, my mom made me promise when she was passing to take care of absolutely everybody in the family. And I'm like, yes, just I'm Louisa from what was that? I'm trying to remember that Disney Pixar one with the magical family. Anyway, so it's relatable that people show up, they're looking for her, and of course she has no choice. She has to go because she has to protect her family. So to me, here I was less relating to Violet, because she's enrolling in a school that's her mom's choice. It's not hers. It's a dangerous school. She could die, but there doesn't seem to me to be like a compelling reason why she has to do this. What are the stakes if she just says, sorry, mom, I'm going to scribe school? They don't talk about tuition. Everybody that is like from the rebellion, the children, them, they're all there. Nobody's like paying for school. So her mom would be mad. So what? You're 20. Go to the school you want. To me, it made her, Violet, have less agency, be kind of more immature and sheltered. And she was sheltered. She was sheltered and she was a bit immature. And this is part of the growth arc that they set up. But I wanted a character who would have a little more agency. Oh, I don't want to make my mom mad. So I could I'll go to the school that I hate, that I might die at, rather than doing the career that I really want. Did she really want it? Or did she really actually secretly want to go to dragon school? That would have been more interesting to me, is if that she secretly wanted to, but she always felt like she couldn't because she wasn't strong. That could have been an opportunity that is just like, yes, seize it and go for it. But she didn't seem to have strong feelings about scribe school either. And I'm like, oh, girl, just this is your life. Make a choice, exert some agency. That was me with this beginning, as opposed to Farah, who is just like, I have to do this to protect my family, and I'm going to make the best of it. With all these cool, Fae characters that maybe I murdered one. So
Maybe I murdered one.
Go running around the woods looking like a wolf, see what happens. So
I kind of felt like the whole part, when I totally agree when she was like, oh, but I have to go. And I'm like, do you have to go?
Do you?
But I kind of got past that. Like, that was early in the story for me. And I feel like that's part of new adult as a genre, and way as well, because when you're young, you don't have agency. We are adults, very much adults, reading these stories. So we're like, do what you want to, girl, right? But people who are younger, when I was younger, I did not feel like I had agency too. And I think part of that is the character arc that is going to be explored, and has been explored in book one partially, which is that learning how to understand what you want versus what you think you're supposed to want. And those things are very hard to discern if you're young and you don't really have a lot of your own earned opinions yet. But I also kind of felt like the mom threat did become clear because she's in a situation several times where like Dane's like, hey, I got an exit for you. You can go
Mhm.
to, I've talked to them. You can go
I've
right
opened the
now.
door, sneak through,
Yes.
go now. Yes.
And she recognizes that yes, she could and she wants to, and she's pretty vocal
Does she
about that.
want to?
I think I think she does. I think early on she wants to. It's that thing. She thinks she's supposed to want it, so she wants it. But the thing, like deep down, that she actually wants to do is to prove herself because her whole life she's been weak, right? So
Yeah.
she's thinking subconsciously, this is a way I can prove myself, but I'm for sure gonna die. I think that is the other piece of the threat or why she stays. Because if she leaves, she knows that her mom is gonna make her come back. If her mom makes her come back, she will for sure die because she will
Yeah.
be shown as weak, right? So her only self-defense is to stay because it's on her terms. And that also aligns with that subconscious. I want to prove myself. Maybe I don't actually want to be a dragon rider, but I want to prove myself. And this is a way I can do that.
Fair enough. All right. Next up, if we mapped Fourth Wing against classic romance beats like the meet cute, no way, forced proximity, all of those, where does it align and where does it break the pattern?
I have a different sort of framework for romance beats for myself because those traditional beats that are outlined in Romancing the Beat, there are like 20 of them. I think there's a
There
lot.
are 20, yes.
And they're for a very specific kind of romance. So they are basically created, or I think probably these stories existed first, and then the beats were sort of like, oh hey, these are common between all these stories, and then that's when it sort of became a thing. But those beats are common in books that are the pillar of like Harlequin and Avon, those big publisher libraries that appeal to traditional romance fans. So they have a 3 act structure. They're built with 4 phases within a 3 act structure. They don't really have a lot of flexibility for different kinds of romantic storytelling. And because Romantasy is a split between romance and fantasy, it has to have elements of both, which means you can't really faithfully represent all of the exact traditional romance beats the same way because we don't get to an HEA at the end of book 1. There
Right.
should be an HEA at the end of book 5 or whatever the last book is. If there's not, then you can't call it romance. But book 1 isn't going to play out that way. So for me, there's 6 must have romance beats, which are the memorable meeting. I don't like to call it a meet cute because it's not always cute. And with these guys, it wasn't cute. It was pretty contentious. So the memorable meeting, you should remember it, and they have to meet on page. The why can't they be together right now, happily, which this one does pretty clearly because they're enemies. The they must spend time together beat. This is usually trope enforced. So like forced proximity or something here. It's the school. They have to be, he's her wing leader and they're at school together. They have to recognize eventually how well they complement one another, which I think starts to happen in the second half of the story, but never fully resolves. And then they have to spend time apart to recognize why they are a good fit for each other, which they do both in this book and in the next books. And then they have to choose one another publicly, which they do. But this, again, can't be the end of the story for them because we got many more books to get through. So I think with this style of story, there's a give and take. You get through some of the beats, then you have to kind of backstep and then rework through another elevation of those beats in the next part of the story.
Yep. So I lined it up against not all of Gwen Hayes's 20 Romancing the Beat beats, but I did line it up against some of the most well-knowns. And so like for the meet cute, Violet meets Aiden on her first day of dragon school, right before climbing the big chasm. It was the right time, but it didn't have a whole lot of impact because she's also meeting like 3 other people. One of them she gives her boot to, another one falls off the cliff. I'm like, who's important here? I can't tell. He's just some dude in the crowd. And she also sees Dane there, and she just talked to her sister, and we also met her mom. And so it was kind of overlooked. There's some guy. Oh, he's the child of the enemies that killed your brother, and by the way, he probably hates you. So it's like, but he's hot, and as well you should, with the 12 stages of physical intimacy. You see him, you have a reaction. That's well done. But she's justifiably her brain. She's thinking more about the challenge, about how to get past the chasm and not fall to her death. She's not really bowled over by meeting him. And I thought it could have been more memorable because maybe she slips and he catches him. And she catches her, maybe something like that. But, hey, whatever. And then we get to this no way. That's apparent right away. Her mom killed his parents. She thinks that his parents were responsible for her brother's death. That's, that's good. That's good tension. That's good friction. And then we have forced proximity. I thought the forced proximity, yes, they were both in school, but we didn't really get forced proximity with them having to be together and work together on the same side until their dragons fixed each other, because he could have taken it or left it. He was her wing leader, but he didn't care if she survived or not. And so it wasn't until her big dragon picked her and that dragon was bonded with his dragon that he's like, oh, I need to make sure you don't die. And so then he's following her around. He's assigning a bodyguard. And then he goes from indifferent to needing to protect her because that could cost him his life too. And so there's escalating attraction that shows up shortly after the forced proximity. So that's nice in sequence. But the midpoint shift that you would often find in romance is missing because all this stuff is happening in the second half. The dark moment when she finds out that, spoilers, that Xaden and the other children of the executed have been meeting up with the Griffin Riders to protect villages. She's mad. She doesn't trust him. But really, if she was paying attention, she should have been more angry with her mom and the whole government for covering up these attacks. I'm like, you're mad at him? You have proven yourself untrustworthy because by allowing Dane to touch you, they read your memories. Maybe they should have told you less, not more, but she's still mad. And Xaden was right to keep things from her because she was a source and she did make them vulnerable. And you're right. There's not a happy ever after in this one. For young adult and for new adult, often it'll end with happy for now. There's kind of a hint at that she's going to forgive him because his lie of omission was a lot less than everything she's ever been told in her entire life about her entire society from her family. And especially when she finds that her brother wasn't dead, he'd switched sides. I think all will be forgiven. And there's like an implied happy for now that they're at least on the same side and together.
I think that's a really good point that they didn't there, like that midpoint shift wasn't there.
No.
And I think it shouldn't be there, not in this book, because there are so many more books they have to get through. And if you resolve all of the romantic conflict in book one, there's nothing to carry it forward for the romance.
Right. You would need to shift to focus on other main characters.
Yeah, which is a different genre. That's not romantasy. That's not how that's not what readers expect from it. So I think I really liked the way the beats were adapted for book one because we're not supposed to fully fall for them as a couple yet. They haven't proven themselves as a couple yet because they haven't had the opportunity to. They're going to have to go through a lot more fire, literal and story, before they can really earn that togetherness that is part of the normal traditional 20 beats that happens in a single story. But because we have so much external stuff happening here, that it doesn't make sense to smush it in. It's a huge story. But also, one thing I really liked was that she did not like him immediately, and he did not like her immediately. They thought they were attractive, which is good. But if he had immediately thought, "Ooh, I want to protect this girl," then that would have felt kind of like that.
Insta love.
Okay, we'll call it insta love. I have another way I say it, which may not be as family friendly. But
we've already dropped the F-bomb. Say what you want.
The magical vagina.
Right? Yes.
Like in the traditional love triangle where there's these two guys that want the same girl and there's no reason they want the same girl. They just want the same girl. She's just magically attractive to everybody. And that is so frustrating. Give me a reason. I need to understand why these people care about each other. He doesn't like her. He wants to kill her. Like, that's great. I like this because that means when the shift happens, it happens for a reason. And I think we talk about this a little bit later, but there are POV scenes from him in the end where he actually talks about how that happened. And I think that's really important to me as the reader, is to understand the why. Not just that they're getting together, but why are they getting together? What does it mean for them personally? And how did that happen?
All right. Yeah, we're going to talk about the love triangle and about the POV a little bit later. So, hang on, readers. Okay, next question. Not only is Fourth Wing credited with spearheading the romantasy genre, it's also cited as bringing renewed attention to the new adult age category with protagonists in the early 20s. So, what besides ages are the hallmarks of new adult age category in fiction for you?
I would say first, I don't think that Fourth Wing should be accredited with spearheading the creation of Romantasy. ACOTAR did that
Right.
most recently. I do agree that it brought it even more into the spotlight. But what would have happened if we hadn't had ACOTAR? Would Fourth Wing have been as big as it has been commercially? Would it have gotten this amazing level of success? I don't know, because ACOTAR built that foundation. So I think we still have to give a nod to the first series that came and laid all of this groundwork within this current evolution of what is now called romantasy. This neither of these created romantic fantasy. They just made it popular for this generation of people. But new adult is a thing that I used to be a blogger. So I got my start in editing being a romance book blogger. And so I would review books and I would post reviews on my blog, and I loved it. It was my thing. I read so much romance. But new A was NA was a thing back then, new adult. And then it wasn't for a long time. And I thought that was kind of weird because I really like the space of new adult. It's between YA, which is young adult, and adult. In adult romances, you might never hear any mention of parents at all.
Right.
But in YA, they are influential. They have to be part of the story. They're like a major player in the decisions that the hero characters make because they're not mature enough yet to be full adults. NA bridges that gap. You still have parents that are in, or guardians that are in the picture tangentially, and they are influential, like with Violet's mom being such a driver for her, joining, because Violet really wants to make her mom proud of her, even if she doesn't want to say that out loud or admit it to herself. So the parents or the guardians are an important. This is sort of like a transition period where they're going from I can't make my own decisions to I need to learn how to make my own decisions, and that's what NA represents. So I think it's a really important space in the market, and I'm glad it's being filled by books that are now more officially NA, because there are that phase of humanity is actually really hard to get out of. Like, how do you learn how to make decisions for yourself in a safe way? So I love it.
Excellent. Yeah, there was a hot minute where like traditional publishing was specifically requesting new adult, and then they stopped, and then it was pretty much indie romance only were being promoted as new adult, and they were all very high heat, a lot of contemporary but also some fantasy new adult. But now people are starting to talk about it again. And this didn't invent that was going on 15 years ago. And so like young adult, in new adult, I think it's about the age, but it's also about their growth arc. It's similar to YA in that the protagonists are learning and growing and becoming the people that they're going to be in their life. But unlike young adult, the new adult protagonists are usually living on their own. They're not living with their family of origin. And so they're navigating life in a school, a college, they're starting their first job, they're moving to a new city. And so there's a lot of fish out of water, and found family is a really common theme. And the voice for new adult is usually a bit more perspective than somebody who's looking at the world with the life experience of a teenager. For Fourth Wing, honestly, for me, at least at the beginning, Violet's voice read more like a teen. I live with teens. I have two of them in my house, and one of them is 19. And Violet did not sound to me like a 20-year-old. She was naive and sheltered and trusting and deferential to her mom in a way that I could only dream of. Okay, she grows a lot, but she started out clearly being a little behind and sheltered. So
Yeah, she was for sure naive. And that is not like personally, I don't love that kind of heroine. Because I mean, there was a time when I was naive, but I'm not now. And I need to be able to identify with the people in books. People choose books for the experience they believe that book is going to give them. So you pick it based on what you want to actually feel. So I never want to feel naive. I never want to feel angst. I never want to feel these things that I did when I was 20 and I made all my mistakes, right? Do I still make mistakes? Sure, but they're different mistakes, right? That's the point. So I agree with you. I think she was she was a little naive. I still believed it though, but that first chapter, especially, with the sister coming in and defending her and like the argument with the mom through the door, and then like, no, you can't take any of your belongings. It just felt very controlling. So that felt very YA to me. That early chapter felt
Yeah,
YA.
me too. Yeah.
Once she gets to the school, it felt more new adult to me. And the more she grew and progressed. And I think we're solidly in that within the second half of the book.
Yep. Okay. I'll go along with that. All right. Next question. Let's talk for a minute about the possibility of a love triangle for Violet's affection with her childhood BFF, Dane, clearly attracted and interested in her. And it looked like a hot minute that she might be open to it too, because she's like, oh, he's been gone for a year and he's so much more mature. And look how tall he is. How does this compare to other fantasy and dystopian love triangle subplots? And did you want more love triangle, or were you happy that Violet was zeroed in on Xaden early on as the object of her affection?
I think so. I look for patterns in what I do in my work is really all about pattern recognition and understanding what audience that those patterns are for. And I think that the way this love triangle was designed is, to me, a hallmark of modern romantasy. So, meaning the style that ACOTAR established. So basically, we have a good boy who is not the right fit, and we have a bad boy who is the right fit. The good boy is the safe choice because they basically align with the modern patriarchy. They have the same ideals as society that wants to keep women safe and small. Whereas the bad boy is the one who wants her to lean into who she is, to really push herself, to take risks, to like confront those fears. Each of those different potential love interests has their own personal selfish reasons for wanting the heroine to do what they're doing. But the way the characters are designed is intended to show the reader, hey, if you are trying to be safe, if somebody's trying to protect you, then that's a flag that maybe you need to start thinking more for yourself, as opposed to the person who's like maybe threatening to you because they're different or they've been misrepresented. Like Xaden has been misrepresented, just like the heroes in ACOTAR. There's a clear pattern here that the bad boy is, yes, romantically viable because, oh, he's a bad boy, he's counterculture, but also there's a reason that society considers that person bad, and maybe we should look at why that is, and is it a good reason for us to just buy into? So it encourages thought, and I really like that. But what I really liked about this one is I'm glad that the love triangle did not go on for very long. I don't personally like them. That's a very YA thing for me. I don't read a lot of YA, not as an adult. And I loved that Xaden, or that Dane, showed his controlling uh, personality very early, that the
He
reader could
did.
see it before she could see it. She recognized it, but she was kind of just like, oh, well, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Right. Making the excuses. But the reader can definitely see it. And I'm so glad that that was there because I don't want that. Will they, won't they? Like the Edward Jacob conversation, right?
Yes.
Like we know she's going to choose Edward. We know she's going to choose Edward. Now that worked in Twilight because there was another piece, Renesmee, that comes in later. But I don't want that. I want to like give me the conflict, show me why the conflict is there. Why is Dane such an important part of her life, and why does he need to be part of this triad? And he serves that role really well in that she thinks he's what she wants because he's safe, but he's actually not what she wants because she can't depend on him. He doesn't care about her. He cares about him.
Yeah. So I've got a slightly different take on it. I thought that dismissing Dane as a possible love interest happened too early. It was a bit of a missed opportunity in this long book in a long series because the actual romance with Xaden doesn't start until the midpoint. And so there could have been more Dane versus Xaden in competing for her affection. And the reason that and so, like you said, Dane is the childhood bestie. That's pretty much Gale to her Katniss, right?
Right.
Jacob
Yep.
to her
Mm-hmm.
Bella. She's
Yep.
not going to pick him, but she could have entertained it because that is the safe choice. Give readers a chance to think that he could be. Let some of them be team Dane. And this is a hot take, but I really love triangles, even for adults. I liked Edward and Jacob competing for Bella. I like Gale and Peeta competing for Katniss. But even in adults, I like Tamlin and Ryson. I like Mercy Thompson's early books where she was dithering between Samuel and Adam. She makes a choice. She goes on. Triangles can go on for too long, like Stephanie Plum's ping-ponging between Morelli and Ranger forever. I got tired waiting for her to pick. And then it's just like season 10 of Love is Blind, where there was the women in the pods both decided that they were tired of waiting for Kavan to make a choice. And it's just like, Kevin, it's time to fish or cut bait. You can't keep dangling these women on these strings. But I think there could have been more teasing because we don't get to the romance until here. And she'd already kind of written off Dane. She could have like entertained that more, just, for me. And then it could be integrated more into her growth arc because the readers figure out that Dane treats her like a baby. He infantilizes her. He's constantly trying to ship her off to scribe school. And he has zero confidence that she could even walk and chew gum at the same time. So yes, you need to refuse he's like, oh, you need to refuse the bond from the strongest dragon because you're a weak little Violet. And it's just like, what? No, Dane is awful. Readers see it, but let Violet's sense of nostalgia, and it does blind it to her. That's good dramatic irony. The readers know something that Violet, our POV character, doesn't, and then we're like, wake up, he's bad. And then it can be integrated into her growth arc that she figures out that she prefers Xaden by how he treats and views her rather than things that Dane actually does. But she's still trusting Dane. She allows him to be close and touch her even after he attempted to read her memories by force. She knows that he's willing to do that. And then she still lets it happen. So that was good. I liked all that where it really is a betrayal, but it would have stung more, I think, if she'd actually entertained having feelings for him and pictured what would a future be like with him, and that's something that her mom would like and that her sister would like. And wouldn't that, just be so much easier? And we don't opt for easy when we're a new adult because nobody, that's not how we act. Okay.
But let me just say something really quick there. I love what you said at the end. We don't give easy for new adult because that's the point, right? Like you're supposed to learn the hard lessons. One thing I noticed, I think it was from when I looked at your notes, Miranda, was that the spelling of Dane's name is Dain, right? That's the end of disdain. It's the second part of disdain. When I was listening to it, they don't spell the names for you.
They
so
don't.
I know how to pronounce
till I got it.
Besgaeth. I can pronounce things like Besgaeth, but I don't know how to spell it. I don't know how to spell Dane or Xaden. I was spelling Xaden with a Z and a Y. So I thought that was really interesting that his name is actually spelled like disdain.
That's funny.
That's a side note. But what I was thinking was that I think part of the reason I like that this triangle wrapped up pretty quickly was that it saved us from having an unreliable narrator. I absolutely despise unreliable narration. When you can't trust what the story is telling you because of the person telling it to you either is intentionally suppressing things that realistically should be revealed in that moment if it were really narrated authentically, or when they change their mind later and something isn't the same and you're like, well, why did that happen? So if Dane had become, if they had drawn it out longer, I would have had doubts in both him and in her, in both the two friends, because they aren't really paying attention to what's going on with them. Like you said, he treats her like a baby. Why should she continue? So yes, I suppose he could have been written so that he didn't do that as much. But from his perspective, I think he really just does want to protect her. Yes, he's doing it for personal reasons. He's selfish. But I think he really just wants to protect this girl that he loves as a friend. But he doesn't love her more than he loves himself or his ambitions. And that is the difference between him and Xaden.
Well, we think so. We don't know exactly.
We don't know, right? Because I have read a little into book 2, and it's like his Dane's. I still don't know. I still don't know if he actually meant to betray her. What do you think about that? Do you think he meant to?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think he could have stopped her from being on the away team that went out there, and he didn't, and he knew.
He said goodbye.
Yeah. All right. Good luck to you out there on this.
I will miss you. I will miss you is what he said. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not good. That's not how you treat a friend. That's not how you treat somebody that you love, that you can see a future with,
Right.
Yeah. All right. We'll keep her moving. Next question. The physical chemistry between Violet and Xaden is a slow burn, but the danger ramps up quickly. How do these two timelines play off each other? And would the story have hit differently if the romance had started getting moving earlier on?
I think it works. The slow burn works for me. I actually do like slow burn in the right situations. I think for me, this is a situation where it really works because I need, for believability reasons, I really need to see the chemistry between these people, not just the sexual tension, but the interpersonal chemistry. Why are they actually a good fit as partners? Why could they be good partners? Show me that early on because I need to believe it in order to keep reading. Otherwise, I would just read erotica, which
Right.
is its own different kind of payoff. But I think what's really interesting about this one is that early on, Zayden is the danger. Like he's the threat to her life early on, which is interesting because he's also necessary. He's necessary in her life because he's her leader and he's also training her. He's giving her skills that she requires to survive. So he's both the danger and the solution at the same time, which is kind of neat. And that goes, I think the pacing is pretty good until that goes where he becomes the safe place, where he's not the risk anymore because she has a reason why she can trust him. So the vulnerability in the first part of the story is for her exposing her weaknesses. If she shows any weakness at this Biscaeth War College, she will be killed. She more targeted more than she's already being targeted. And she doesn't want to lose any protection that she has, even from, maybe not trustworthy sources like Zayden. But once that shift happens, the vulnerability in the second half is that your partner is going to return your affection. You have to trust that they're actually going to return your affection. And that is a risk too. So I think both the mindset shift here when she switches from fearing him to trusting him, or yeah, I guess she does trust him. Yeah, she trusts him in this book, is about personal worth. It's about how we see ourselves. And the role that he plays is both romantic and he's both the antagonist and the romantic partner, depending on which part of the story we're looking at, which I think is really cool.
All right. Yeah, I think it did make sense. In a lot of high heat romances, the physical attraction and intimacy comes before emotional trust. That's kind of the nature of the genre with high heat. The emotional trust isn't solid until the story's climax because they have to get over their inner wound and their growth arc, and this lands pretty close with the hints about there being a happy for now in the ending, even though it's not really stated. But we get a scene of them at least together, and with reasons not to hate each other. But it's the first in the series, and so it's more natural that there would be a physical attraction rather than you're my soulmate, you're my huckleberry for life. Yeah. Regarding the danger, Violet is vulnerable from the start. She's physically weak. She's not cutthroat. She gives up one of her two grippy shoes to keep a friend safe. But is this a lifelong friend? No, it's somebody she met in line. And so I was just like, is this a strategic move to try and make one ally who makes it through? I don't think so. I don't think she's strategic enough. And I'm like, okay, that's just dumb. I'm like having my chances of making it across. But it's also a symptom of her privilege that she'd never been in a position where she actually had to like do her best to survive, because she was used to just getting good enough and passing along. So she's vulnerable because she's weak and she's naive and she's never questioned whether her mom and her narrative were 100% the truth. So Fourth Wing does a good job of pairing her vulnerability with the danger of the school. That's a natural fit. But to be fair, finding this type of danger is pretty common in fantasy romance. The stakes are usually high. The stakes are usually death. It's not like some contemporary romances where the stakes are social canceling or something like that. And it's just like, I won't have any friends for the rest of this year until I start some other school someplace else. So those stakes are par for the course in a fantasy universe.
I love that you said that's just dumb. When about her giving her the other person,
why are you giving away your shoes? You need two shoes.
She didn't even know she needed earlier that she had to be given.
Her sister told her.
Her sister gave, and at the same time that her sister gave her the armor and the boots, she also told her don't make any friends, and that is repeated throughout the story. And the first thing she does is she's like, "Hi, person I've never met.
Yeah,
you seem so friendly. I don't want you to die. Here's a shoe." Now, I agree that is dumb, but I like it. I like it because it shows who she is. It shows that she is a person who she's led by her heart. She's very cerebral. She's basically me. She's basically me. She's like, she thinks with her heart. She lets her heart make her decisions instead of logic. but she also is very logical in the way she processes information. She's a studier. She's a little bit introverted. This describes a lot of people who read books, if you
Oh
think
yeah.
about it, who read romance books. So I feel like this avatar of a hero is very relatable because a lot of us feel that way, right? And even though, somebody else like, or even we could say it to ourselves, be like, this is a dumb decision. You should not do this. We're going to
No.
do it anyway because that's what our heart tells us to do. And if we can't be true to who we aren't ourselves, right? That is the whole intrinsic problem with growth is understanding how to be the person you are without becoming a different person.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I like that take. And you're just like, oh, she's so sweet. She's giving away. And I'm just like, you just like have your chances of surviving because you don't listen to your sister. Blah blah blah. Just
But also, it's also an interesting dichotomy between her and Zayden because they're both heart led, which we find out about him much later. Actually, in the POV scenes at the end, they reveal a lot about him. But
well, and
he
the scars on his back
and
is
the scars, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
he is definitely heart led, but he is very strategic and he has his emotions locked down,
Yeah.
as opposed to her is the
He
opposite. So
couldn't
there,
afford to be a marshmallow like
he
her.
doesn't have
No,
the privilege, like you said it
no, he
earlier.
doesn't.
She has the privilege to be emotional, and he does not, and that is
Right.
really interesting as a story device.
It is. I agree with that. All right. So Violet's physical frailty is highlighted a lot early on. And do you think that her dragons chose her because of that vulnerability or in spite of it? And how does that shape what you think the story is about?
I thought about this when I was first reading because they talk about that frailty a lot. It is mentioned
Yes.
a lot. So they really want you to know that she is fragile. And she is. I mean, it's a thing throughout the book. But even I kind of have a problem with that too, because like, yes, she's fragile, but she kind of just overcomes it really easily. Oh, my kneecap popped out of socket. No problem. I'll just wrap it and I'll
I'll
be
go to the
fine.
healer. Yeah.
I'll just go to the healers who aren't magical. They're not menders. They're just people who are going to wrap it up and give me some herbs, and it's fine. It's not modern medicine. It's like, well, not that I can tell. It's sort of like a little bit older style of like very physicality kind of medicine, which like I'm like, okay, but how real is that? Really? If she's that fragile, can she actually function? And they show her functioning. So I think some of that's because Taryn protects her. But my first thought early on was, are they going to pick her because she's fragile? Would be an interesting choice because that would kind of go against what we know, what the society of humans knows about dragons, and by knows I mean thinks they know about dragons. Clearly, they don't know everything about dragons. So that could have been an interesting sort of like peek into the mythology of dragons and what their culture is and how they do things. Ultimately, I think the reason that the dragons choose her is probably better than that because she showed strength of spirit as opposed to strength of person, and strength of spirit is always going to outweigh physical strength. So I liked the way it was done ultimately, but it was kind of a weird, like it was kind of weird throughout the story that it was like convenient. It was convenient for me.
Yeah, no, she was hurt when she wanted to be hurt. And then when she needed to go into some kind of like knife fight, then she was fine because it never really
Right.
impaired her. And I'm like, that must be nice. you know,
Right. Right.
I'm having a good bones day. All right. So I think that the dragons chose her because of her bravery, not because of her frailty. She stepped in to protect the smaller dragon from these school bullies. But the school bullies themselves seemed a little contrived. Who's going to attempt to bully a baby dragon in front of 100 other dragons? They don't need Violet to
Especially
come
Sigale.
protect them. I know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not normal. That's not. So these bullies were ridiculous. I thought one-dimensional characters with no depth and no real logic, because they were bad because they were bullies, and they bullied because they were bad. They didn't have any like motivation to do that, and the school just seemed perfectly fine. Where's their code of conduct? Don't you have a code of conduct? Maybe kick people out when they try to murder people. It's just, and they're harassing dragons. Come on. So I thought that all of that was a setup for Violet to be brave and protect the little dragon, but there were other ways to set it up. Somebody could have put that little dragon at risk because of ignorance or desperation to be paired, not because they're just evil for evil's sake. So Violet could have stepped in when some student had tried to ride it or attempted to bond with it by force that was putting that dragon at risk. They didn't need these mindless bullies to attempt to intentionally hurt a baby dragon. I didn't think that was logical. I thought that kind of showed that those bullies had the depth of a very shallow pond. They
Yeah, I agree. I struggled with that moment with the little golden dragon whose name is
I
escaping me
can't
right now.
remember either. I'm not good at the names.
Well, I've been hearing it in the audio, and I'm like, of course that's her name. Yes, but it's not. It's a name I would never have made up on my own, so I can't remember it. But anyway, that moment where, like, especially where she doesn't defend herself, she just sits there. Like the dragon can fly clearly, but she just sits there, and I'm like, what is the purpose of why? Like, I don't. The dragon actually bothered me more than the bullies did because she just sat there, and it was almost like she was creating a test for Violet, but that's actually never confirmed. Even though we have
No,
access to that dragon's head through Violet, we never get that confirmed, and that bothered
no,
me.
I would have that another hanging thread that would have been an opportunity to explain something that wasn't really logical.
Yeah, but I think as far as like the code of conduct, they do address that because it is a war college where half the people who come in are either going to die because of training or are not going to get chosen and might as well die because you can't leave the college. There's no out. You become a writer. That's it. So I kind of felt like I agree. I did not like the bully for the bully's sake part of it. Like, come on. Do we have to keep perpetuating bullying? Yes, it happens, but the more you see it happen, the more people do it because they think
There,
it's
yeah, it's
okay.
normalizing it.
Like
It's
let's
okay to
not
go around
normalize
and
it.
yeah,
Right. Can we give it a
punch
better
down.
reason?
Yeah,
Right. Stop punching down. Or can we at least humanize it and show why it's happening so people understand that as opposed to just like, oh, bad people are bad, which I didn't like. I did like that the story gave itself a reason to have this mortal like murder spree because I would rather have some sort of built-in thing like that in the world where it's like, well, we only have this many dragons and you have to prove that you are the strongest or the dragons won't choose you, so the humans think. I liked that. So I'm glad it had that. But I agree. I didn't like the way it was just so everybody's trying to kill Violet because she's weak. Oh, she's the weakest one. Oh, now we have so many bullies. Like I would have liked to have seen a little bit more dimension in that.
well, and just from a world building setup, why does everybody have to die if they're not the top? Don't you have people who need to make shoes? Come on now.
Right.
What kind?
Where's the
I've been
industry?
at these
What is the
before.
industry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean this. There are other jobs in this universe, and I've thought about this for a bunch of them where they academy in a school and like the whole Red Rising. Oh well, everybody who gets in there has to kill another top candidate. And I'm like, why? That's doesn't your society need people? Because it
Right.
seems like it does. You don't have AI replacing everybody. You need some people. Why are we just killing people for no real good reason other than to make it tough and to make it dangerous? I'm just like, there's real danger in this world. We need people to fight against these things that are attacking and maybe the griffins and maybe not and all this other stuff that's going on. Why are the people disposable like tissue paper? It's terrible. So
Yes,
all right.
agreed.
How does the first person POV, almost exclusively from Violet's perspective, shape the romantic intensity compared to dual close POV that's commonly found in romance? Did you see the Zayden POV chapter near the end? Did you think it added anything? Did the reader's limited access to his interiority function as a romantic tension engine? And did you find any value in the deleted scenes and additional chapters from Zayden's POV at the end of the book?
I see your expression as you read that question, and I'm really curious what your answer is going to be. But I will start. I'm a romance reader through and through, and I love me some dual perspective. It's almost a requirement for me. So if it's not a genre mashup, like I urban fantasy romance or romantasy, those are their own kind of expectations, and I expect this sort of setup where you have a single POV, which is a heroine that we follow along with. I like that in this. But generally, I love the double. I want to see both sides. I want to live in both people's heads because that's part of the journey for me is understanding the dynamic between them. But urban fantasy romance and romantasy typically have this one perspective way of telling the story. And usually it is a female heroine, and usually it is somebody that's younger, that we can sort of see the growth process happen naturally with them. I think this is because these stories are written by women for women, even though they are not traditionally like exactly like romance, which is definitely by women for women for the most part. These sort of reach a little bit bigger of a readership, but I would hazard a guess that much of the fan base of Fourth Wing or ACOTAR or any other romantasy is probably women, and probably younger women.
Oh, you're
So
right. Yeah.
these this first person like single perspective, it helps us really understand the damaging societal theme, the patriarchy that is keeping this person down. It illustrates the situation that we are in societally. And I really appreciate that as a narrative perspective, as opposed to romance more traditionally, which is not as much about that theme. It's definitely there, and we use it as a vehicle to tell those stories and communicate those messages. But that is more about the two people having their own growth together, whereas this is more about focusing on one person having growth that personally I can relate to. The romance is there, it's essential, but it's not the driving piece as much as in a traditional romance.
Yep. I can see that. And I'm gonna, as you were expecting, I'm gonna take a different take. I'm gonna take a hot take because I really enjoy single POV, even in romance novels. Okay. I adore Mariana Zapata, especially The Wall of Winnipeg and Me. Pretty much all of hers are single POV. And I'm doing a different novel deep dive later this year on One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune, focusing on the single POV and how that impacts the plot and the main misunderstanding or secret in the story. But there's been quite a few that have been popular lately, like The Hating Game is single POV, Allie Hazelwood, and she both like The Love Hypothesis and Bride. And then there's a lot of romances that can be considered romantic women's fiction, because women's fiction, it's usually from one POV of, it's like Beach Read by Emily Henry and Love Lettering by Kate Claiborne. So I would have preferred that this story didn't have Zayden's chapter. Oh, I didn't like it. I was like, this adds nothing. Okay, now I want to be very clear. I like Teddy Hamilton as an audiobook narrator. He does a good job. He's done a bazillion audiobooks. One I'm listening to right now has him because I'm listening to Warrior Princess Assassin, and he's one of the three voices that they have for that. So it's not his narration, it's how it's written, because I thought the language in when I was reading it in the thing that it's not distinct from Violet's. He was whiny. He didn't really add much on that last chapter where he's like, oh, she's in a coma and I'm worried and I'm scared because I care about her. I'm like, who needs that? Not that I'm ever going to point to 50 Shades of Grey for a tutorial on writing skills. However, in the third book in that series, they handled Anastasia's coma while staying in her POV, where she had flashes of consciousness between blackouts, and we got to see glimpses of Christian's concern for her. And we didn't have to have him like take the POV and say, oh, I'm very concerned about Anastasia. No, we know that. We don't need to hear from you. Oh, and those deleted scenes, I didn't even finish them. Okay, the first line of the deleted chapter in deleted chapter 27, that's from Zayden's POV. Dane Atos is dancing on my last fucking nerve. Okay, I live with guys. All right, I've got a husband, I've got teenagers. They do not talk about people dancing on their nerve. And another thing that they said in that chapter is, oh, somebody's putting their dirty ass boots on the briefing table. None of these guys care about the cleanliness of the briefing table or where their shoes are. That's not a man. I'm just, okay, maybe it is. Maybe it's a very different man than I've ever encountered, but it's just like, I didn't think that he had a distinct enough voice. It just sounded like more swear words, but it's the same cadence and the same like voice. There are books that I think are better with two POVs and some that are better with a single one. I think this one might have been better with a single, but that's based on just the first book. I don't know if he gets more POV as the series goes on, because that's like what happened with Outlander. They started with just Claire, and then Jamie finally took the wheel later, but it's just like he had to when they were like apart and, you know, in like the second and third book. But okay.
I actually liked, I didn't get to this earlier, but I actually liked the extra scenes. And as you can probably imagine why I like the dual POV. But I realized during listening to them, and even after I got into book two, part of the purpose of those scenes, he's kind of a sage character. So if we think about how does she learn things? She learns a lot from Xaden at school, and even though she doesn't want to, he's her leader. That continues in book two, or even early on. This is not a spoiler. And I mean, you know that their dragons are mated, they're going to spend time together. And he is kind of the vehicle that the reader gets information about the external world through, because he is the leader of the resistance. So we know that he knows things that she doesn't know, and it makes sense for him to give her those things in conversation or contextually. So I kind of see him as a sage character in that way. And I think those ending POV chapters are kind of like tiptoeing you into the water of, here's why Xaden is important, and here's why he knows. Here's how here's how he's going to impart what he knows to her in a way that's important to you, dearest reader, dear gentle reader, or whatever Bridgerton says. But I agree that the cadence is the same. I
Yes.
Now for me, I wasn't reading it; I was listening to it, and this is the reason I like audio.
Because you got Teddy Hamilton's voice instead of
I got Teddy Hamilton.
Yeah,
that's right.
So
yeah.
When I've looked at it, because I stopped it, I was listening to it. I listened to it twice, and then I was like, oh, I should read these because I've got a question about it. I'm like, that's the same voice.
Yes, but when Teddy Hamilton says it, I felt it. I believed it. I believed him as Xaden. Now, I think, was he the best choice for Xaden? I love he's in my top 3 narrators.
Oh yeah,
like I love Teddy Hamilton. Was he the best choice for Xaden? I don't know. Maybe there could have been a better. I don't know, but I think he did a great job in the audio part of portraying his character differently than her. Because the narrator for Violet is aggressive. She is aggressive. Like when I heard she did the intro, like, the very beginning of the audiobook is like, my name is so and so. This is this book that you're listening to, and they give you like the trigger warnings. And I was like, holy cow, just like the way she intonated that
didn't
intro
sound like you would think Violet would be. Yeah.
I was like, do I want to listen to this, or do I want to just read this? Because it was so
the
aggressive.
Trigger warning chapters always. So.
But
I have to go back and listen to that. So
I think that there are stories written for narration, and there are stories written for reading, and it's becoming increasingly harder to write for both. So when you have people who are strictly audio, they're probably going to have a different impression of a story than people who are strictly text, because they come across differently. There's so much more freedom for interpretation when you read it than when you hear it read to you.
That's true. All right. We're going to keep going here. The language in the Fourth Wing, and we talked about this a little bit before, feels very now, with modern casual slang and very little archaic fantasy vocabulary. Do you think that makes it more accessible? And do you think it'll still feel fresh in 10 or 20 years? And would a more formal fantasy voice shift this book out of Romantasy category?
I don't think it would have shifted it out of Romantasy. I think that you could still have the formal voice with the same story, and it would have been fine. I don't think that was a defining factor of it. I liked it, like we talked about earlier, because it made it accessible to me. There's no barrier to entry. You don't need to understand how to speak Elven or Orcish or anything like that, to be able to understand what's being said here. I also like that, unlike in sci-fi, like in sci-fi romance, you have like plexiglass or, names for things that you'd be like, oh, that's probably a window. But here they just call it glass. They just call it a window. They don't make up things unnecessarily. I don't like world building that is for the sake of world building. I like world building that supports the story, and like not just the characters, but the setting. Support the setting. Don't try to define the setting. You have to pull from what your reader already intrinsically knows, and you have to strike that balance between what's going to keep them in the story and make them want more of it and differentiate it, as opposed to overwhelm them with things that don't matter, that they don't need to know. So I felt like it did a good job of that, and I was very comfortable in it because of that. But that said, like, I didn't like reading Tolkien. So I read the Tolkien books. I didn't like them. I had to force myself to get through them. Eventually I enjoyed the story, but it was so hard to read because they didn't feel like me. They didn't feel like they were written for me. These stories felt like they were written for me. And I think that's the difference.
All right. I have a different take. You and I should do this all the time. Point, counterpoint. I didn't like the F-bomb. I didn't like shitty used as an adjective. I thought that there could have been better, more universe specific oaths. I did like when they were like, Malik, take them, all these things. But I thought it could be more interesting and more specific. There's plenty of non trendy contemporary swears and lots of F-bombs, shitty as an adjective that I felt could have been reminded me more that we were in a fantasy universe if we use something specific. I like, commend them to Malik and references like that. Because to me, specific is better than generic. And it reminds me that we're in a fantasy world and not just hanging out at the Quick Trip parking lot down the street. I didn't think it was too current, though, that it was totally distracting. We weren't saying Riz Skibbity Ohio 6-7, which I say those all right now because my kid is not home from school yet because he would just absolutely pass out. So just mortify him. So those would definitely have dated it. I think there is a difference of opinion, and I think it doesn't have to be cumbersome like a whole Elfin or Klingon language to give the flavor words a specificity in the universe. And yeah, one of my favorites is always Battlestar Galactica's frack. And
Yes.
because you know exactly what they mean,
Yes.
but every time they say it, it reminds you, I'm in a different universe. So
I will say that even though I did enjoy the experience, I worry a little if it's going to hold up over time because things like shitty are current language of our generation. Those are things that we say. Like Riz Skibbity, like I don't even know how to use those words in sentences, so I wouldn't even try. And I wonder if so for example, thinking back to the original Night Huntress books by Janine Frost, there were no cell phones when those books were written. So the situations that Kat gets into, a lot of them could have been solved by carrying a cell phone and asking for help or doing whatever, access, right? So when Janine Frost rewrote those stories with the Bones POV, because she sort of re-released them, which of course I loved because they're urban fantasy romance, female heroine perspective, but now I get to see the hero's mindset and what's going on with him. So when she re-released those, she had to figure out how to explain, like she put cell phones in and she had to explain why they wouldn't work in this situation or why the original story was still valid. So kind of that's the analog to what I'm thinking is like language wise, will it be the same? Will people still connect with it? Or will it feel like, oh, that's so 1970s or 1980s or something for us, right? So I don't know. We'll just have to see.
we will have to see. Now, you think about A Court of Thorn and Roses, that was published 11 years ago. I don't think that is sounding dated yet, but 11 years is nothing, really nothing when in the long scheme of things. It still has a long tail. So
But I think it also wasn't as casual. It was a
it
little bit
wasn't as
more
casual.
formal.
And I liked it better for it. Okay. So
I did like it, and it sounded great in audio too. So there's that.
all right. Next question. Every time Violet levels up, whether she's bonding with dragons, unlocking her signet, there's an immediate catch. Aha, you thought you were succeeding, but that makes something harder. What moment hit you the hardest when a win revealed a new problem?
She finally gets her dragon, not just one, but two. So she's proven herself. But now it's worse because now they really want to kill her more than they did before. She's not just a threat, she is the threat. I thought this was really, really fun. I liked that each time she levels up, like it's predictable. I could see it coming. Now, I don't know if that's because I study story structure and it's like I'm an expert
Yeah,
in
no,
romance.
that's the story
right?
structure that,
Yeah. But I loved that and I expected that and I felt gratified when it happened because it's not that I knew it was going to happen. That's not the thing I like. The thing I like is the reason why it happens. Like they were all believable to me. So whenever she levels up with the dragons and now she's target number one because, oh, well, Taryn's on the market now. So I'll just kill her and he'll choose me. That's not true. He probably wouldn't have. He would have died.
That
probably.
was also, these bullies don't make any sense. I mean, everything you said about dragons is that they go into a long period of mourning after they lose somebody. And I'm like, so killing her is not actually going to get you what you say that you want.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But even after she gets her signet power, she can't control it, right? So she has it, but now it's a liability because she can't actually focus it or have the strength to continue doing it without burning out, which then is even higher circumstances and stakes. So I really liked the way it was done. I wrote down like 3 or 4 examples of it, But those are the two that really come to mind, are the dragons and the signet power.
I'd written down the same two examples, that she bonds with two dragons, and one of them is the special. It's the Mary Sue of all dragons. And then everybody wants to kill her. And I'm just like, well, you can't win for losing here, can you? But then I did like, this is inconsistent with everything they've said about dragons and dragon bonding. And it's very important for the reason that Xaden is now has to protect her, that, oh, if she were to die, then it's going to impact her strong dragon. It's going to impact his strong dragon, and then it'll impact him. None of that logic holds up with I can murder her and take her dragon.
Right. Well, I
Right.
think that the people who want to murder her don't care about Sigale and Taryn and Xaden. They probably want Xaden to die too because
Yeah.
he's marked, right? So I think for them, like there are no consequences for them. There's only upsides for them. Whereas Xaden has a very complex web of reasons why he can't do things, which
Yeah.
is why I like
No,
his character design.
I like his character too. I'm wondering what the story would have been like from just his POV. Oh, there's
Oh
that
yeah,
general's daughter.
delicious, delicious. I would have loved
Maybe
it.
I would have liked it better because I got annoyed with Violet. But
Yeah.
I did like that her unlocking her signet led to some pretty memorable sex, though. That was a fun
Yes.
twist.
Also revenge. Oh, the way
Yes.
when it first manifested and she killed that bully that had Jack, who'd been like
Yeah.
basically targeting her the whole time, I was just like, yes. Yes.
It's like, oopsie, I guess I have some powers. Yes. Did I do that? It's an Urkel moment. So,
Oh my gosh, that's a throwback.
all right. Violet doesn't want to become her mother. What does that fear? How does that fear shape her choices? And does it ever hold her back from doing what she needs to do?
Yeah, Violet not wanting to become her mother, I think is one of her key character design choices. So when I'm looking at how characters work within a story, I call these the core values, character core values. There's 7 of them. And there's the lie and the limiting belief, which both grow out of a fear of something. So Violet's afraid she's going to become like her mother. There's actually a deeper fear there, but she she has this fear of not wanting to be her mom, and so she adopts these protective belief systems that help her navigate her world without facing that fear. So one of them is a lie, and that's something that can't be disproven, things like I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, things that you have to stop believing. But then there's also things that are like rule based. So you're like, well, I that can't happen because if I follow this rule, then this thing will never happen to me. So a lot of the choices that she makes early on, I think she makes because of these beliefs that she has that she thinks are going to protect her, but that actually ultimately do not. And her mother's role in that is critical because she doesn't want to become the villain. Essentially, she's heart led, right? So she doesn't want to be the person that people look at and think that person is evil. But then she learns through growing that it's all about perspective, and her mom's not right either. Is her mom even a lovable person? Can she be loved? Like these are all questions that we have to answer for ourselves. And we see Violet go through that process, which is very humanizing. And I think that's part of the draw of the story for me.
I think so too. I mean, her mom was making all of the decisions for her in the beginning. The only reason she was at Dragon School instead of Scribe School is because her mom told her to. Now, this is why she was not as relatable to me because I'm old. I'm Gen X. My parents did not tell me when or to go to college or where. I majored in English and my parents thought it was a terrible idea, but I went anyway because I was 18 and I applied for colleges and I had worked a job and had the money to submit the applications, and nobody was going to tell me what to do. And I had scholarships and I worked jobs and I got the degree I wanted. And I never even asked them. And just like they told me things and I'm like, whatever, I'm an adult. But I have kids now and I know things are different. But it wasn't those limiting factors were not in this book. There wasn't that she needed tuition or she needed a FERPA form and all that other stuff. It's just like this is the start of adulthood. So why doesn't she go to school that she wants? It seemed like pleasing her mom was more important than having the life that she wanted, unless she really did want to go to Dragon School. But that sure, there were plenty of pages that they could have worked that in. And so I'm just like, if that's really your motivation, maybe say it in your head, in your narrative text. Like, you know, all the kids that were the children of the rebellion were auto enrolled in this Dragon School. I think she could have easily gotten out of it. There weren't any consequences if she didn't. So, for a person who didn't want to be her mom, she definitely did everything her mom told her and went to the school her mom wanted her to, just like all of her siblings. I'm like, all right, you're gonna be your mom then. You're either gonna be your mom or you're not. And so
We
you
do
could,
find out more about her mom, right?
yeah.
As we go on, we find out the lies that her mom has told,
Oh
especially
yeah.
after
No.
she meets Brendan is alive.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for the story, right? So mom's definitely keeping secrets. And I think we'll continue to see this growth arc with the mom being the catalyst as we go and see really what are her sins? What has she done? How
The
does Violet
question that
relate to
I didn't
those?
know is whether or not her sister knew that her brother was still alive too.
They answer that in the second book.
Do they? Okay, because I only read the first book, and I'm just like,
It's in the first like quarter of the second book, so
all
it's
right,
not
all
too
right, I'm
far
gonna
in,
have to
but they
pick
do
that up.
answer
I'm gonna
that.
have to get going. All right. Is the dark moment in Fourth Wing driven more by romantic betrayal or plot revelation? And what does that tell us about romantasy genre?
I think there are a series of moments that act together as the what we normally in romance consider the dark moment, but I feel like there's kind of a series of those. She realizes that Zayden has withheld information from her, that lie by omission, which is that personal breach of trust. Then she realizes she's been betrayed by Dane, which is a true violation, a friend trust, long term violation. Then she has to watch Liam die. Oh God, that
Oh,
was awful. Like you see it coming. You know it's going to happen. Like you see her getting close to this person. He even mentions that his sister is going to be there next year, and he's been writing letters. And I'm like, oh no,
he's
oh
a red
no,
shirt. He's
he's a
doomed.
red shirt. And then at the end has to understand the full scope of the tyranny and this smear campaign that her own family has perpetuated against these innocent people all over the land. Without all of those things, because those all touch different pieces of her part in the story and how the plot affects her. Without all of that, you don't really have enough information, or she doesn't really have enough information to start sort of pushing through different parts of her growth arc. So because these happen on like a plot level, a trope level, a character level, the romance level, I think it's more effective that there's multiple things hitting her kind of all at the same part of the story than having one big single moment that is like the dark moment. Because if you try to put all of that into one moment in this story, it might be one, you'd lose some of the themes. And it might be so overwhelming that like, how does it stands way up here and everything else feels way down here. And the energy is, you can't connect the energy from that. So I thought it was pretty cool. I liked it.
Well, there was a lot of lies and betrayals, and that's why I thought, from a traditional romance perspective, this dark moment needs to be related between something that she finds out about Zayden. But that was in there mixed in with so much. Mom's a liar. My brother's alive. Dane has betrayed me. There's so much other stuff going on that from the perspective of the question, I thought it was a plot driven rather than a romance driven one. That it didn't really play into Violet's emotional wound, her misbelief, because it wasn't even about her. All these people are doing their own agendas. So usually the romance genre, the betrayal ties into their emotional wound, and they overreact because of their own baggage. And then it's the last step in their character growth arc to heal that wound and overcome that misbelief so that they can be whole and love this other person. That's not this. This is, oh, everything I know is a lie. There's a small part of it that deals with Satan, but maybe he was reasonable to not tell me because Dane's reading my things and my mom is the general who murdered my whole family. And so so I think that the moment that the revelation that everyone was keeping things from her, Zayden didn't tell her that he and the other kids of the rebellion leaders were working with the Griffin Riders. But that's like list number 10 on the list of things that she found out. And then I thought she overreacted and breaking up and saying I can't. But maybe it's just like I can't trust myself because I didn't notice my mom was pathological. I
Right.
didn't notice my
Yeah.
best friend was using me. I didn't notice. Finally the scales have fallen from her eyes and she can see, and the world is different, and she needs a minute to adjust. And yes, Liam's death, awful, just awful, because he was so sweet. The kids that have lost everything, she realizes, but she realized this before. that the kids of the rebellion were forced to enter the Dragon Brigade and either fly or die trying. She learned that before that. She should have had some hints that maybe her mom and the government are not always the good guys. Her emotional wound that she's been told by people, including Dane and her own sister, that she's too weak, she can't handle anything. But her mom doesn't buy into that because her mom's the one who forced her to go to war school. So that was a little inconsistent and wishy-washy. I think she was out of line with Satan, that he should have shared that with her, when clearly even what he did tell her was exploited by Dane Atos. And the Dark Knight was firmly, for me, in the plot in the fantasy universe, and wasn't really a romance Dark Knight of the Soul.
Which I think makes sense, because in Romantasy style, because the character arc stretches for so long and the romance arc stretches for so long, it's like you kind of have to choose something to focus on. And I feel like because this is so focused on Violet, it makes sense for it to be personal to her as opposed to about the romance. Yet, I think we will get to a point later in the series.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, that is probably coming at some point, because they're not to happy ever after. They still have a chance to like, oh, I don't think I can trust you. I don't know if I can trust you. And it's just like, yeah, do that in a later book.
This is why romance is so hard to write well.
Yes.
People, I hear this all the time. Romance is so easy.
Just,
I can make so much money. I can just put up a romance book and make so much money. I'm like, okay, first of all, do you read it? Second of all, try it. Just try it.
Just see how that goes for you.
Really hard to write, not just in traditional, but in forms like this, when it is a major theme, because you have to know way more than you think you do about storytelling and about romance storytelling.
Absolutely. All right. This has gone long, but that's okay. I think it's a great conversation. People are going to enjoy it. We're going to end with one last question, and that's, what advice do you have for romance authors who want to write romantasy?
You should read it. I just said that earlier, but my number one piece of advice is, if you are asking the question, should I write a romance? The answer is probably no, because that probably means you don't read it. And if you are not a reader fan of it, you don't understand who you're writing it for. So if you love reading romantasy and you want to write a romantasy and you feel the calling, fucking write it. If you don't feel that, or if you're like, well, I'm not sure, how do I learn how to write romantasy? It's probably not for you. Or you should read way more, heavily more in the genre until you feel it in your bones, because that's where good stories come from. They don't come from structure. They come from here, from feeling.
But Kalytics has told me that it's trending. Sue, Sue, I need to chase.
I can make so much money if I just write a romantasy right now. That train has passed. Even if it did,
money comes in. Yeah.
If it ever existed, it's gone now, right?
So I know that people who watch mine often do want to write things and things that they do read, but reading things and writing things are not always the same, because there's this learning curve where it's like, I've been writing since I was 5. It's easy because I've got this story in my head and I write a bunch of words and then everybody can see the story in my head. No, that takes skill. And so for me, some pointers for how to translate the story in your head onto the story on the page is, for romantasy, go ahead and spend some time with your core world building and external fantasy plot. If you have a slow burn romantic subplot, make sure that you plant those seeds early, show that attraction, even if it's attraction against their better judgment. Avoid insta love, and avoid a romantic subplot that just comes dropping out of nowhere just in time. Build the foundation. One of the romantasy pointers is, I would say it's okay to use single POV, and it's okay to skip some of the romancing the beats. Romantasy audiences have more interest in love triangles than your typical romance reader. And you want to make sure pretty early on who the main character's love interest is, and if it's poly. But at some point, you want to make it clear who they're meant to be with at some point. Maybe it doesn't even need to be in the first book in the series. But at some point, if you want this to have the happy ever after ending, there should be a reason why this is the one person who completes your heroine or hero, and not just like, the best of a bunch of bad choices at the end of the day.
I think that's a good distinction to make about poly. I'm so glad you brought that up. And I'll be really quick here. Because in romantasy, you're not looking for poly, you're looking for the triangle with the good boy, bad boy.
Yeah.
With with people who want poly are a different audience. There is an overlap there, but it is a different style of story, and it has extra elements. You need an extra growth arc. You need three at least, unless
Yes,
you're
you need
writing
at
reverse
least
harem.
three. And I've seen them a lot in a fantasy universe, but I don't know that I would call those romantasy because you're going to be
Yeah,
hitting the wrong audience. You need
right, right.
poly in your keywords. So
You need to be clear up front from the blurb that it is poly. Because if I go into a story not knowing if it's a love triangle or poly, I'm probably not going to commit to it because I need to understand the difference for myself.
yeah. All right. Okay. So that's our list of questions for everybody who's been playing along. I hope that you had extra snacks for your book club because this is going to be a long one. But thank you so much, Sue Brown Moore, for joining me. Do you have any other thoughts before we log this off?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. First of all, this was a ton of fun. I love talking story. I like back from my romance reviewer days. It's fun. It's fun to talk to people. So if you're in a book club right now, value the time that you have with these people, even if they don't agree with you, because sometimes we make our best realizations about ourselves for things that we didn't understand or didn't believe. So also, if you want to write romance, I know I was kind of pissy about that earlier. But if you want to write romance, you should. You should write it. You should try it because we need more stories of hope in the world, and I love them. I'll be one of your readers. I will say, if you are a romance writer and you're like, how the heck do I use tropes? I would like to flip a trope, all those things. I have a free download that you can get. It's a flip trope checklist, and we're going to have that in the episode list. And I'll give you tips for how to do it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sue. I'm looking forward to talking to you in the future about romance and tropes and other things. And for all the readers and authors who are watching, join me next week where we'll have another video about writing, editing, and the writing life. This is Miranda Darrow wishing you happy writing.